Okay, welcome everyone to the CISO Sandbox webinar. We are joined today by George Finney, and I could not be more excited to have George here. George, thank you for joining the Sandbox.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So I'll go ahead and introduce you a little bit before you introduce yourself. It's always nice to have other people say nice things about you. So that's not a hard thing for me to do at all because I have absolutely loved your book here, Getting Lost in the Shadow here, Well Aware, Master the 9 Cybersecurity Habits to Protect Your Future. So George is an award-winning CISO and the best-selling author of several cybersecurity books, including Well Aware. George was recognized in 2021 as one of the top 100 CISOs in the world by CISOs Connect and has worked in cybersecurity for over 20 years and has helped startups, global telecommunications firms, and nonprofits improve their security posture. So that's George's bio. But when you talk to him and when you read his work, you realize you are in the presence of a truly original thinker. I just love this book. It's required reading. If Malcolm Gladwell or the Freakonomics team were to write a cybersecurity book, it would look like George's. It weaves a tapestry of historical events and scientific research around specific industry concepts in a way that makes the 180 pages of your book go by fast, but stay with you a long time. So today we're going to talk about cybersecurity habits and his brand new research into applying personality testing to cybersecurity training. So again, George, welcome to Soundbox. And please, I'll let you sort of tell us a little about yourself and your journey into cybersecurity.
Again, thank you guys for having me. I love being able to share my passion for security with you guys and with the world. I didn't start out in security. When I graduated college, I thought I was going to be a stockbroker. So I actually went to New York. I interviewed with some Wall Street firms. And thankfully, I realized that being a stockbroker wasn't for me, and so I kind of wandered for a few years in technology. But after a couple of years, the security kind of got into my blood. We started doing PIX firewalls and hardening Linux servers, and it just kind of gelled from there. I also went to law school, so I don't recommend folks go to law school, but I think it's incredibly difficult. But from a growth perspective, gosh, it gives so much of a broader view of security, right? So whether it's policy or compliance, whether it's looking at contracts, all of those different elements, I think also play a role in security. And I think that was really what challenged me to start thinking more about the big picture and not just specific technology solutions. And gosh, the more that I learn about security, the more that I think people are the most important part. In security, we talk about people, processes, and technology as though they're like three equal slices of a security pie, but really not to make like a Soylent Green reference, but the pie is people. It's 100% people. People are the ones that create and run the technology. People are the ones that follow or don't follow or policy and procedures. So I think the more we think about technology, gosh, it's just another word for a tool, right? And it's all about the people using the tools and how you use those tools to achieve your goals. And thinking of security that way, gosh, we have to be able to get the people part of security right.
Yeah, it really comes out in your work. It's really well said what you did just say there. And right away in your book, you have a couple pretty bold statements. I mean, you right away say that 90% of breaches they say have a human element. You say actually it's 100%, and you have a reasoning behind that. And then, yeah, go ahead and carry off on that.
Yeah. I mean, we always look at the Verizon data breach report every year, right? And they'll kind of break down on why they think certain breaches happened. But ultimately, again, it happens because people are involved. I should caution, right? There's a secret motto to the security industry, and I talk about this as well in the book. We say people are the weakest link, and that 100% is wrong, right? People aren't the weakest link. People are the only link, right? That's all there is. Again, how do we focus on changing the way we even think about people, right? From a psychology perspective, if we believe that people are the weakest link, then we're going to make that become our reality, right? So flipping the notion there, if we can somehow be an optimist and find inspiration and hope and believe that we can get better, that's the missing ingredient. That's the key for our success, is believing it. And I think as you go through the different chapters in the book, right? I talk about the successful leaders that have made a difference, and kind of exemplify each of the different 9 cybersecurity habits, because people are successful. People are successful every day at not clicking on phishing links. So I like to flip it. I don't report on how many people clicked on my phishing links, whether it's 5 or 10% or whatever the different scenario is. I report to my management on how many people didn't click, right? Again, it's 95, 97% of people don't click, and I want to make sure that gets normalized, not the bad behavior getting normalized, right?
Really well put. Really important stuff. I love that. The idea of looking at people as threats, is looking at people as weaknesses, and then just taking the mindset that people are the only thing that you really need to focus on. It's really kind of an enlightening way of looking at it. Speaking of hope and inspiration, I cannot talk to you without having my eyes drawn to the Voltron shrine behind you. I have to say, for those of you who missed Voltron or the Transformers, Voltron is 5 robotic lions. It was the greatest cartoon, one of in the 80s. I myself begged and pleaded and begged my parents to spend, I remember even being like $35 at the time, which in 1985 was a lot of money. And God, it was the best Christmas present I ever had. George, what is that a deliberate placement of Voltron behind you in a cybersecurity context, or do you just love Voltron, the Transformers?
Well, it's both. I'll be honest. You don't create a shrine to Voltron just because you like security. I do have another picture. I also do paintings. So I've done another painting. I did Optimus, but I have a painting of Voltron. I should put both of them there so you get the full Voltron shrine effect. But no, I love Voltron in particular about security. Because Voltron is it's a gender diverse team of people that come together to help protect the whole universe, right? If you haven't watched the cartoon, Voltron is called the defender of the universe. But it's not just one thing, defending the whole, world from evil, huge monster aliens. It all comes back to a team, right? We have to work together to help make ourselves secure, and having Voltron there behind me all the time really reminds me of that.
Yeah, I have a suspicion there's going to be a really cool tie-in to Voltron members, the Voltron team and personality, but we'll hold off on that one for now. Let's first talk about the 9 cybersecurity habits. You're the only person I've ever really seen put cybersecurity into the terms of habit, and you seem to launch off from that with an approach that I just love, is that cybersecurity awareness is really behavior habits. Take us through the psychology, take us through as many of your amazing historical anecdotes as you can. You have that diverse background. You bring in a lot of really interesting ideas to bear in a way that really advances the subject. So let's hear it. Let's hear all about the habits.
Yeah. So why did I start with habits? I love that question because it comes down to me as an individual, and we know that humans, 50% of all human behavior, everything we do is based in habits, right? Whether it's at a certain time of day, I brush my teeth, or how I drive, right? I kind of go on autopilot as I go into the office every day, right? That autopilot behavior is what we do for most of our lives. And we're not going to have a ton of success at changing people's intentional behavior, right? So whatever my job is, that I'm a CFO, or I'm an attorney, or I'm a salesperson. That focus, the things that aren't habits, that's how I solve problems. That's what I'm doing to get my job done. And it feels hard sometimes when I have a conversation with a doctor about changing the way they secure their office, because they're focused on patients, they're focused on making people's lives better, and it feels hard to shift away. It feels like they're missing something. And I think oftentimes when we give people advice in security, we're asking them to do the hard part, right? That they can take the statement, okay, never write your password down, but they've got to go figure out how to build that into their lives and incorporate that secure behavior, and or not, depending on what else they have going on. So it's really the habits, right? It's those unconscious behaviors. If we can tap those, I think security starts to feel easy. But before you jump into habits, I did a lot of research into to folks who have quit smoking or quit drinking, or that have started a workout routine or eat healthy, right? All of those things involve a key ingredient, and that's me as a human. That I have to believe that I am the type of person that can stop smoking, or I have to believe that I'm the type of person that wakes up at 5 a.m. to go for a run in the morning, right? That's who I have to see myself as. And I think all of the negative aspects that surround security, right? It's scary. We tend to use fear to motivate people to do whatever it is that we're trying to motivate them to do. And it shuts people down. And instead, I think we need to help direct them to believe that they can make a difference, and everybody's got their own unique talents that they bring. So with the 9 habits, what I've done, I've kind of built a personality test around it. So the first 4 habits are literacy, skepticism, vigilance, and secrecy. Those are all things that you can do inside yourself, and so I kind of map those internal behaviors with the personality test, and I kind of contrast them against the final 5 habits. Those are the external habits. So culture, diligence, community, mirroring, and deception all involve working with other people. So your biggest internal strength combined with your biggest external strength makes you the unique personality type when it comes to security habits that you are, right? So for me, I'm a cybersecurity explorer. That means I have high vigilance on the internal side and high diligence on the external side. I do a lot of research, right? This makes total sense for me. The way that I kind of do my practice, I'm always out there kind of looking on the cutting edge to find that new thing. And then, with vigilance, I kind of help others incorporate those things into their lives. I wish I would have known this when I started out in my career 20 years ago. And my hope is that by taking the personality test, you can take the test for free at wellawaresecurity.com. You can help kind of guide your own path, right? So for me, vigilance and diligence are what I find easiest. For others, it might be culture and skepticism. But whatever those things are, that's where I want you to start, because that's where the low hanging fruit is going to be in terms of starting to internalize those behaviors and building your identity as someone who values security. And then that just prepares you later on for the more challenging things you might have to do that aren't in your comfort zone. And so, I want to prepare you for those things by helping kind of take the first, baby steps to get there.
Fantastic. Now I want to remind the audience here, this is a Q&A session, so please put some questions out there. We got one already that is right in line with what you just talked about here, George. And I do encourage everybody else to start bringing your questions, because this is a great opportunity for George to answer them. He said in a previous session that if it were up to him, he would spend an hour just answering questions. So let's hope we can get that going. The question here is, how can we use personality types to determine what types of human risk an organization may be exposed to if they don't effectively train their employees?
Yeah, so great question. And I think I'll start with the frameworks that are out there. Lots of great frameworks like the NIST cybersecurity framework or others. I think all of those look at organizations in the context of a breach, right? So there's the things you do before a breach. There's to prepare. There's the things you do after a breach to kind of recover. But it's all in the context of how an organization marshals its forces to either prevent or detect or mitigate an issue. Human risk is different, right? So me as an individual, I might have access. So one of the things that I talk about in the book is in marketing, you may do these things called personas, and you kind of craft your marketing message to a specific person. And I think of risk the same way, right? So I have risk personas or security personas that I developed, and for me, the way that I kind of map out those different personality types, that then I will kind of build my awareness program around. I want to focus on folks with sensitive creds, right? So level of access. So that might be a server admin. That might be an executive who has the authority to say certain things. I want to craft my awareness around that risk profile, but also I want to know how they use technology, right? Are they the kind of person that's always jumping in to find that brand new shiny iPhone or whatever new device that they have to have? Or are they, kind of more of a curmudgeon and they never use technology? It's only their admin that touches technology, right? So, I think as I've actually mapped my user base at SMU, and they fit kind of neatly into to really four main categories of persona. You can kind of go deeper and maybe do three different iterations of level of access or three different iterations of use of technology. But you can simplify it, right? How many resources do you have to really do custom work? But I find that again, even though you're making that marketing message, you can't forget about relationships, and relationships are one-to-one. So part of me. Part of my strategy of focusing on security awareness as a CISO is because I am building those direct relationships with my head of HR, with department heads that I'm talking to, and I think those relationships are what has allowed my security program to succeed, because everybody knows who I am. Everybody feels comfortable. They trust that I'm going to do a good job. I joke sometimes, they'll say like WWGD, what would George do? And that's okay, right? Again, I want to help them, if they can't develop their own personal identity, they can adopt mine, which is weird. Like, you've got to be a nerd and into Voltron and Transformers and stuff. But I think knowing that personal kind of attention, are they the type of person that's sharing a lot of things on Facebook or LinkedIn? I think that risk profile can change very dramatically, and you have to help kind of educate. I think our number one job as CISOs is to help educate folks to the risks that are out there, because often the technology we use kind of hides the fact that email is one of the number one threat vectors, right? We don't see 99% of all of the malicious email or spam or phishing or whatever we're getting, and I think part of that is, oh my gosh, now I've got to go educate and hey, have you heard about have I been pwned? And when you look up your email address, how many different breaches has your email address been linked to? No, there's a lot of risk there, and we will change the way we behave accordingly. And gosh, I think once you educate folks, when you go to the state fair, right, people know, like, okay, well, I'm gonna if I'm a man, I'm gonna put my wallet in my front pocket, so it's easier, it's harder to get pickpocketed. Or if I'm a woman, we advise women to like put their purses over their shoulders, so it's harder to snatch away from you. That's what you do when you're in kind of more of a risky situation. And we want users. Users are the ones that are in the best position to know how risky the situation they're in. But sometimes we hide that from them. So I think there's a partnership there that again, it boils back down to relationships.
So great answer. Really, really great answer. Now I see why you wanted to have a Q&A, because you really just sort of took that right off the cuff and answered that beautifully. And when you were talking about also personality types and the way that people respond to a cybersecurity event or to any kind of a basic issue there, in your book you had a really, really interesting part about introverts and extroverts and the way that they will react to a stressful situation. And I think you even had a suggestion for how to develop a team based on personality that would be a more secure team based on that. And so before we launch in the Q&A, because the questions are piling in here, I would like to hear that, because that's something we all know introverts, we all know extroverts, we all kind of categorize ourselves in one of those two big buckets. Maybe speak to that a little bit now.
So I'm going to just come right out and say I'm an introvert. So I feel like I'm in therapy, right? Introverts Anonymous should be a thing, but it's so anonymous we don't talk about it. Right? So yeah, gosh, it's harder, I think, for me as an introvert to do those other extroverted kind of external habits, right? So I think my own internal strength is sometimes a weakness, and vice versa. So I think part of security is really knowing yourself, and I love, again, the personality test. There have been whole teams or companies that everybody took the personality test, and I work with some organizations to kind of graph that I've got this kind of cool chart that helps you kind of visually understand where your teams are. So, say if you're a security operations center, that's cool, but you have certain group goals that you have to meet, right? You have to be on alert all the time. So of the internal habits, really important are things like vigilance. Alert fatigue is a real issue. So that particular organization, right, it was very interested to see, hey, where are my folks at around that? But again, knowing the strengths of a team, maybe your team needs to be more balanced. Knowing that you don't have a lot of folks that are good at mirroring is important, right? So as the habit for mirroring, we tell people to do penetration tests. We tell individuals to go and look at their social media profiles from a third party perspective, but finding folks that are willing to give that feedback in our lives is something that's really, really challenging. So I don't want to just prepare individuals, Elliot, for knowing what your own personality type, right? Because to be successful in your organization, you have to be a part of a team. You may form different teams, throughout the course of your job, right? You may be part of a project. You may be a part of a group that's going to a trade show, right? Knowing everyone's strengths helps you, I think, because we tend to like the other people that are exactly like us, which is a tendency. It's a bias. But I think knowing that other people out there have different strengths helps kind of overcome that bias and helps us collaborate better with them, because we need kind of a more complete teams, I think, to be better at security, right? We need to have both, folks that are very skeptical, but also folks that can keep secrets, right? And I think part of that identity, right, when I talk to folks that I'm just so gullible, I'll sometimes play pranks on people, and yeah, if you think of yourself as your identity, that I'm a gullible person, well, it might be hard for you to be able to think, okay, I can make a difference in security, but you do have strengths in other areas, right? And I think finding someone else that is skeptical is one way of overcoming, that gullibility, right? If that's your weakness.
Right, right. You want someone who you complete me. All right. So there was a question that popped up right away that I've been laughing at. This is from Dutch Schwartz, who's Dutch. I've admired your work from afar for some time now. Thanks for joining. George, what would Voltron's strongest and weakest cyber habits be?
Gosh, does Voltron have any weaknesses? I don't know. No, I think, when it comes to cyber, right, I think there's so much to protect from, right? Voltron can't be everywhere at once. If there's a weakness, maybe it's that. And I think, that is a challenge, right? We have this, huge, we call them threat surfaces, in cyber. How do we focus and prioritize our resources on, not just the most critical things, because, hopefully we're already doing that. But we want to, try and guess where the bad guys are going to be, right? We want to be proactive rather than reactive, but we can't be everywhere at once. And I think that's I think Voltron's challenge is, you've got to build that team. The team is, stuck on a planet somewhere, but the bad guys are attacking some other planet. How do they get there? Is it a distraction? All of those, logistics challenges, are a real issue.
Yeah, I love it. And I think about the idea of these different kinds of lions that come together based on their different kinds of traits. And I wonder if there's some kind of a personality parable there where you have different personalities that would match together nicely. That's yeah, great. So we have some more questions here. I think we're just going to keep on going in. Let's get to Ville, who asked, you talked a lot about human-centric approach towards security. Why do you think so many solutions out there are more tech-focused? What does this tell about the industry?
I love that question, Ville. So I think, so I'm a huge proponent of open source software, right? And I think, the similar kind of concept, right? There are companies out there that have commercial solutions. They have sales teams, they have marketing teams, right? They're going to get a majority of the marketplace for a particular software solution, even when there's an open source product out there that might be very good. It's about focus, because people want to go someplace they trust, and if you hear a lot of marketing around that, right, you may not even know that an open source product exists. I think there's a similar issue in security. So as a concept, right, what if any products are out there that we can consume for security awareness, right? You might have your online training, you might have simulated phishing. There are some other, there's a great company, Living Security, based out of Austin, that does security escape rooms, or they started doing that. They do more than that today. But I think there's just not a lot of products out there to do that. And so we're very solutions oriented in our industry. When we find an issue, we generally find a product for that. There's firewalls. Okay, that solves that category. There's logging, there's penetration testing, right? So I think because a lot of security folks come up through IT, we think about things very focused around technology and very focused around solutions. And frankly, there's a lot of security marketing out there that touts products as the solution. And I think the challenge for us as security practitioners in our various organizations, we can't just rely on the tools that are out there. We've got to build connections with folks. We've got to help them understand to do better. and that's not always going to be there's not always going to be a tool out there to solve that. So I think it's a very similar issue. And I don't I don't, by the way, have an answer for that. I mean, it's I hear this conversation happen quite a bit, like around zero trust, right? There's no zero trust product, but because zero trust is a strategy. It's a way of integrating lots of different disparate tools and techniques even to secure all of your products by removing trust from digital systems. It's not a product, but yet all of the marketing out there is being done by companies that want to market their product as a zero trust solution. So I think it's about the way we talk about products. So if there is a solution, I think it's about conversations like this. I think it's about being a part of information security advisory councils or engaging with your community. And so to bring this back to the 9 habits, one of the most common questions I get is okay, dude, 9 cybersecurity habits, that's way too many. Where do I start? What's the most important one? The most important one is community. If you can't do any of the others, right, rely on your community to help you get better. And part of being engaged in a community is participating, right? You can't just be a lurker on a message board and get the same amount of engagement that you would if you're actually participating in the group and asking questions and going to meetups or whatever. So gosh, I mean, there's so many cyber conferences out there. Make connections, talk to people. That's I think the best way to get around the marketing hype is cool. Those are commercials going on in the background, but we need to be connected as an industry and as a community.
Yeah, you actually answered one of my. That was a really good response there. That you actually had a question. You answered a question I was thinking of asking, which is the most important habit. So thanks for that, community. Okay, and Dutch has a couple questions here, and they're all really good. Let's go right down. This one is, George, have you found that other CISOs have had success with their HR talent leaders by leveraging your habits approach versus more classic security awareness programs? Interesting.
Yeah. So, I for me, one of my most important relationships at the university is with my head of HR. So
interesting.
It's selfishly, a lot of the high levels of participation that I get in some of the security awareness events is, admittedly, because I go to my head of HR and I ask her if I can please give away free vacation days as my prizes, and she's like, yeah, sure, however many you need, it's totally cool. But that makes a huge difference. So I think this is. This kind of brings up kind of more of a detailed organizational challenge we have in security, right? So, some CISOs report into IT. So maybe you report to your CIO. Others might report outside of IT in various ways, audit or risk or legal. I've heard lots of different angles there. But I think it's a challenge, in all of those areas, right? Because IT and security in particular aren't the the chief culture officers of your organization. They're not the chief people officers, and I think to help influence everything you do, you have to have that partnership with HR. I've done like informal polls at some of our CISO events that we go to. And I've found probably it's 50-50. So about 50% of CISOs have their own security trainers or IT trainers that they can leverage to go help deliver your security awareness message, and the other half don't. So they're relying on HR and their HR trainers to go help deliver that message, and however they're going to accomplish that. Maybe it's online training, maybe it's some in-person stuff. But I wrote WellAware specifically, to kind of parallel other books in the industry, like Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, like Malcolm Gladwell's books, or like Jim Collins' Good to Great. And all the reason that I did that was because whatever your profession in life, whether it's sales or you're going into leadership, you have a professional development path that you're going to go on, and you're going to read those books. But there really wasn't one that approached security from more of a layperson's perspective. And the ones that are out there, there are lots of great resources about security awareness training. So Perry Carpenter's book on transforming security awareness is amazing, but it's not necessarily something that a layperson would want to consume. And so I think we're still in the early days, to answer Touch's question, but I have had some successes with HR groups reaching out, wanting to kind of incorporate the 9 habits into their security training, because it's measurable, right? And that's one of the things that I hope to accomplish with the 9 habits, right? We know we want to change behaviors, but how do we know when we're successful? We know when we're successful because we can measure the behavior change, right? So I hate, like in security awareness training, when we do like a quiz before and after you take some sort of training, because you're essentially teaching to the test, but you're only really measuring whether they can repeat stuff back to you. Instead, right, I want to see behavior change, and that, I think, is really where habits come in, and that really also aligns with a lot of kind of focused efforts on the parts of HR groups to develop wellness programs. Again, wellness is why I named the book Well Aware, right? It's a play on marrying wellness with awareness. But HR teams know, right? They're reading books like James Clear's Atomic Habits, or BJ Fogg's Tiny Habits, or Charles Duhigg's The Power of Habit. They are, I think, already understand the importance of habits in organizations. And so helping, introduce the 9 cybersecurity habits to them, again, the free personality test, I think is a great way of kind of helping, bring security in a way that HR groups already understand.
Great question by Dutch. Great answer by George. I love that, because that's something that I thought about for a long time, is that cybersecurity seems to be one of those, it's a problem and a solution that seems to exist at the intersection of IT and HR. And you're trying to create, with awareness, basically a benefit. When I became cyber aware, which was recently, I didn't come from this industry. It was a benefit I took home, and I have now shared, like a wellness benefit, with my family, with my friends, and people really appreciate that. And I really love that approach to it. And I love the fact that you can look at cybersecurity as wellness. I completely agree with that. That's awesome. We have about 6 more minutes, and we have a couple more questions here. So cruising to the next one. How can we encourage people? This is from Ashley Chapman. How can we encourage people to turn their cyber strengths into daily habits?
Thank you, Ashley. That's a great segue to where I would go next after the personality test. So, I do sign people up for my mailing list. If you go through the test, feel free to unsubscribe if you don't want my emails. But one of the things that I do send out in the newsletters is some habit recipes. And so, again, we're sometimes in security, we're asking people to do the hard work of building those habits into their lives, right? And they have to be the ones to go figure out how to do that. And instead, I think all of the research on habits out there suggests that there's this habit loop. So the idea is, the first step is a cue, a prompt, or whatever. Everybody uses different terminology, but that's what gets you to do a behavior, right? And so whatever that behavior is, that will be reinforced by a reward, right? So if we're talking about brushing our teeth, right, before bed every night, I will brush my teeth. For some people, they have a face routine, right? They'll wash their face and do their stuff, masks or whatever. I don't know. But maybe that's the cue to get them to move on to the next stage of brushing their teeth, right? Different people live their lives differently, is the point. behaviors, right? We know there are certain behaviors that we want to encourage. So, maybe I want to encourage you to use a password vault, or maybe I want to encourage you to set up MFA, or whatever those behaviors are. And then there's the reward, and we can't sleep on the reward, because that's the most important part, right? So going back to brushing teeth, we know that the toothpaste companies, put those minty flavors in and put a little like extra like fresh feeling. There's a little acidic thing that they put in to let that flavor pop in your mouth. Even that tiny bit of like flavor or tingly feeling in your mouth, that is enough of a reward to release dopamine to give you that reinforcement you need to do that behavior again the next time you see the particular prompt. That's why people put minty flavor on floss, right? Nobody wants to do it to floss their teeth, but oh, cool! Now if I have a minty fresh floss, I'll definitely do that. So with the different 9 habits, right? So I want to find whatever your biggest internal strength and external strength is, right? That's the point of the personality test. But from there, I've got some recipe cards, and you can customize your recipes. But I want you to kind of brainstorm on what prompts would work well for you. Like after I drink my coffee in the morning, that's a great prompt because I'm making my coffee. I can do a little security behavior while I'm waiting for my coffee to brew, but I'm already addicted to it, and I get that hit of dopamine after I do that behavior. So I think it takes a little bit of extra coaching, right? And eventually, where I'd love to see security awareness go is a much more wellness coach model or leadership coach model, where we can talk about those individual things and really custom build your security habits together, so that you're not having to do that on your own. But again, a CEO is going to have different needs and different live their lives differently than maybe your CFO would, or maybe a single mom working in a call center, or a teacher, right? A lot of variations between how people work, how people live, what their values are, and I think we have to find those things to help reinforce that habit loop. But again, you can have a lot of different recipe cards and kind of custom build the way you do security. But the whole point is I want to help people be intentional about their security. I want people to feel like, oh, security isn't hard. It's totally easy. Here, let's just follow this easy three-step method, prompt, behavior, reward, and we can make it happen. Now that's the goal.
Yeah, that's awesome. And be able to get some kind of a little bit of a dopamine reward for a good security behavior, it really is key. It's fully agree, and that's something that we believe in very highly here. We have 1 more minute, 2 more questions. If we go a little over, do you have a hard stop here, or do you have a time to answer 2 more questions?
I don't have a hard stop. No, we can keep going.
Okay, we got 2 more questions here, and they're both really good. That's why I do want to get to this one here from Delphine Bagwire. Apart from giving incentives, how would you advise getting employees to complete their security awareness training?
So that's a great question, and I think everybody's on the edge of their seat for knowing the answer. I don't know that I know the answer for sure, right? So there's the carrot and the stick. Incentives, generally speaking, are will appeal to a certain percentage of your population, but not 100%. I don't like having consequences because and I talk about this in kind of the intro to the book. We know, and from studying cybersecurity literacy and the way. So in the book, I interviewed the CEO of the Girl Scouts to talk about how they train their girls, from as young as 5 to teenage years. And it was very striking when I talked to her, because and I knew this from some of the psychology research, right? So fear shuts down your brain. So as a tool in your toolkit, the consequences are good to help people avoid doing bad things, right? So you know instantly when you've touched a hot stove that you're not going to do that again. cool. How do you get people to actually proactively learn things? You can't use fear. You have to be able to build a safe environment for people to work in. They can't feel victimized. And I think things like simulated phishing are one of those things that can really send the wrong message sometimes, and you have to have kind of guardrails around things like that. But I want to flip that message, right? So how can I create a safe environment? How do I encourage people to learn and know that they're not going to be constantly bombarded with messages of, hey, have you taken that training yet? It's been another 24 hours. Have you taken, right? How do you get that? Well, I think it comes back down to relationships. There was some research that came out of Penn a couple of years ago where you only need 25% of a group to adopt a new behavior for that behavior to become a sustainable long-term change, right? So first, we shouldn't set ourselves up for failure as a goal to get 100% participation right out of the gate. Instead, I think finding those partnerships that can get you to that quarter of a population that to adopt that new behavior, whatever the behavior is, that's where you can start to make a difference, right? So you build your team, you build a coalition, you grow it organically, and then I think you reach a tipping point much earlier than what I would have guessed in terms of your growth. Right. So once you can hit 25%, once you're getting a third of a group to buy into, I don't know, reporting phishing by clicking a button, then I think it's really more about relationships. It's about teamwork at that point. So I did a game last year at SMU for simulated phishing, but it was volunteer, right? I wasn't just sending it out to everybody. But everybody got to write their own phishing message, and they sent the phishing messages to each other. And the person that clicked the fewest amount of times won a prize. So there's still an incentive there, but only a couple of people won prizes. Everybody else, they got excited because there was a leaderboard, and they wanted to see their name or their team name on the leaderboard. They joined the game because they had some friends that were joining the game, and they wanted to play together. So you can't dismiss gosh, when you talk to veterans, right, the reason they fight is to protect the person right next to them, right? It's not some complicated concept. It's relationships. So if we can bring that in a safe way into organizations, that's I think how we get better. The incentives certainly help, but we also have to get rid of the stick.
Right. I love it. Yeah. Go carrot, more carrot, less stick. We have one more question. Do you have time to answer this last one?
Yeah. Go for it.
Sort of answer this. This is Dutch's question. So Dutch has been an all-star on the message board here. So
thank you, Dutch.
You kind of answered this with your toothpaste when you talked about toothpaste before, but also just really quick back up when you mentioned the Girl Scouts. That was an awesome section of your book. I almost read that out loud in this session here. I actually read it out loud to my wife when I was at home and said, "You've got to hear this. This is amazing." It was really interesting stuff. So again, everybody, you really do have to get this book. I'm losing it in this. There it is. Somewhere in there. Wow, that's pretty trippy if you do that enough. It's kind of yeah. But it's absolutely a must read book. So last question from Dutch. Is there an analogy that consistently lands with other business leaders that helps them internalize and then act on the 9 habits? So a go-to analogy.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to there was a day that my book changed, right? So it took about 3 years to write, but I still remember the specific day when the analogy, like, it just popped into my head. I knew I wanted to lead off the book with a story that sets up like the mystery of all the things that are going to come. And I wanted, not something necessarily, recent, but I wanted to share the message that security really is about people, and how do I convince you of that? So I tell the story of this guy named Johan. He's building his business. He goes to a venture capitalist
Loved
for
the way you
money.
started the book with that. That was
Um,
amazing.
Really, I mean, like, so the giveaway here, if you haven't read the book, the individual is Johann Gutenberg, and it was actually in the 1500s. It was about the printing press, and for the book, I actually did I you can go on Project Gutenberg and like actually read the court case when he went to trial, because his venture capitalists had a rogue insider that stole a bunch of information. They probably destroyed the partnership documents that Johann. I don't think Johann was a particularly fastidious person. I would say his strength probably wasn't diligence. So and now, like, I'm just thinking, like, and now I've got to go back and like do like this historical personality test. So what cyber persona would Johann Gutenberg have had, is an interesting question, right? But that analogy, right? I'm a business person. I'm working with other people. I've got a secret, right? And that's one of the things that Gutenberg did is, he didn't share his idea with anybody, but the rogue insider, probably planted by the venture capitalist in this example, he had to train someone and all of his secret techniques, and this guy knew all of the secret techniques. Weirdly, later, like the rogue insider gets married to the venture capitalist's daughter. Like, you can't make this stuff up. But the fact that it happened 500 years ago, and we're still having the same things happen today with rogue insiders in businesses. They just have different tools. There are different outcomes they can leverage. I think, to me, that's the most convincing message that I've been able to find, that security really is about people, right? And I wouldn't want Gutenberg to try and turn him into a cybersecurity practitioner and have him run a firewall. No, I want him to innovate and come up with even better ideas and build a better, more interesting world. And that's what we're doing as CISOs or as security practitioners with all of our organizations, right? We don't need our CEOs or our CFOs or our CHROs or whatever the executives or other folks we work with. We don't need to turn them into security people, but we have to enable them to build security into their jobs, whatever they are, right? It's not a one size fits all kind of approach that's going to work. And I think, gosh, knowing that we could have prevented Gutenberg from losing his company and going bankrupt, gosh, I wish we would have been around back there to help him out.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And that was such a bold and interesting way to start your book. I was like, where is he going with this? And I'm glad you did bring that up to finish this off here. Well, everybody, I think you all would agree this was a fantastic CISO Sandbox. George, thank you so much for joining us. We went over. I apologize to you and everybody for going over, but it's hard to stop. This one I could have gone forever with. There's so much more within his book and within all of your different writings you have out there. And we look forward to what you're doing next. Breaking news for some, George is writing a book on zero trust that's going to be, I think, fascinating. So I really look forward to hopefully having you again when you're ready to talk about that down the road.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Stay safe, everybody. Good night. Good morning, wherever you're from. Okay. Bye-bye.